Welcome everybody to our first global R&D meeting, and a big welcome of course to our 170 external participants. I'm Jan, the CTO of the DFINITY Foundation, and I'm going to lead you through this meeting today. The global R&D meeting is a meeting where DFINITY R&D meets weekly to think on progress, share plans, and demo our work. Now today is a very special global R&D, the first one that we do public, and therefore we have a brief message from our founder, Dom Williams.
Hello DFINians and community members. I'm currently traveling, so I've made this quick pre-recording so I can be with you. Global R&D has become a huge tradition at the DFINITY Foundation. Every week, team members across the world log in to hear news, watch technical demos, and hear about our plans to contribute even more technology to the internet computer ecosystem. Occasionally, I've shared clips of demos with the wider internet computer community on Twitter, and they've always been very popular. We always wanted to share more, but oftentimes work has gotten in the way. So in the end, we've gone with a bold decision to just open up the entire meeting to the world once every 2 weeks. This is the very first global R&D that anyone will be able to watch to get a sense for how we work, the things we're working on, and the progress that is being made. For years now, DFINITY has run blockchain's largest R&D operation. The internet computer blockchain's capabilities are completely unique, and they derive from hundreds of years of research and engineering effort. Today, community members joining our main technical meeting will get an unfiltered view of an incredible technical organization at work. For those who are new to this meeting, welcome. Sometimes the content is going to be very technical, sometimes less so, and oftentimes we're going to be boring and make mistakes, but if you hang around long enough, you'll come across some really interesting material. A Web 2 company like Meta or Google would never make their internal meetings open, but since we're a not-for-profit foundation and work on Web 3 and the open internet, we're going with this fully open approach. I hope everyone enjoys global R&D as much as I always have, and wish everyone presenting the best of luck with their demos and talks. I'll catch up with proceedings very shortly. Bye for now.
So yeah, I guess let's have all the fun. Today we have a packed agenda like usually. It's a mixture between updates on our roadmaps, metrics, demos, what's going on with the community, and then also a demo from the community to which I'm looking forward very much. We'll start this with an update from Samuel Buri, our VP of Engineering, on the next items on our roadmaps and some changes on that roadmap. Thank you, Samuel.
Hello, my name is Sam, as already introduced. Thanks, Jan. Can we please go to the next slide? Well, we are in the process of changing our road mapping approach, and I would like to explain to you why and how this new approach looks like. On the left, you see an illustration of how we used to do that in the past. We had milestones named after metals, and they would combine a set of features. So for example, here titanium would deliver A, B, and C. Today, we announced that we actually want to drop this concept of milestones, and instead we will maintain stack ranked lists of features associated with specific domains. So for example, we want to communicate to you in the core protocol domain, we work first on A, then E, F, etc. We want to release these features as they reach the necessary maturity, and maybe sometimes we will release previews and then subsequently improve them. Before I show you all the concrete domains and the features we have in mind, let's look at why we want to make this change. So let's please go to the next slide. I guess we had to realize that sticking to long-term aggressive timelines is nearly infeasible because we underestimate the work, the scope grows, we discover things have been missing in our plans, and we change priorities. Additionally, such milestones create unnecessary dependencies as they bundle features, and if one of them is not ready, should we now declare the milestone done or not? We struggle with this at times. Also, we have seen that if we make sort of a developer preview and collect early feedback, that's appreciated by the community and gives us great insights. And that's also a bit at odds with having big milestones. And because we changed a lot, it led to quite some confusion in the community. So we want to avoid that in the future. There is a couple of more learnings and things we want to keep. Most importantly, we feel it's good to have a public roadmap. It should be no secret what the foundation works on. That's why we actually want to keep it and improve it, and that's what I'm talking about. Recently, some team members or community members have questioned whether we focus our resources on the right topics. To create more transparency, we want to show how much or which percentage of our team is working on which domain. You will see the numbers in a moment. Also, the community sometimes questions, do we actually react to community requests? And by highlighting features that address such requests, we want to make this more explicit. When we talk about ETAs, so estimated time of arrivals or basically due dates, we want to be more conservative and not communicate them publicly too early because we often had to shift. Internally, we will keep them to stay focused, but to the public, we'll announce them rather late. As mentioned, we want to keep the concept of early access to developer previews, and we would like to also keep the concept of having events, right? We had events around milestones in the past. Now it will be much more around big releases, such as Bitcoin integration. Let's go on to the next slide, please. Here you see the new format. And in the different columns, we illustrate these domains, mapping roughly to teams or multiple teams within the foundation. So the percentages below describe the fraction of the R&D team working in this domain. For example, we have 43% of our team working on core protocol topics. Within these domains, we maintain a stack ranking of features. On the top, you see what's top priority, what we focus on now, and further down, we see features that we have started working on or will do so in the near future. A bit of a disclaimer, this list here and the content is not final, but we thought it's still worthwhile presenting it here as we talk to the entire community for the first time. So stay tuned for more updates. We need to also listen to the teams, what other things we may have missed, so it's not final. And speaking about priorities, we also want to point out that just because the community approved a feature earlier than another one by means of an NNS motion proposal doesn't mean that we need to deliver or can actually deliver this feature first, because it depends on how teams are loaded, on interdependencies. Please bear that in mind. You see that some features are highlighted with this heart emoji, and that illustrates those are features that directly address some community requests. And as you can see, we have quite many hearts here. So let's go through these domains. I will not go into all the features, but just mention the highlights. Core protocol is focusing on the replica. It's basically the main part of our system. It includes the OS, the networking layer, consensus, execution environment, crypto libraries, etc. And the main focus, or one of the main focus here, is clearly Bitcoin integration. And we will show you a demo later on, which is quite exciting. Moving on to boundary or boundary nodes, it's very much about the boundary nodes, but also, for example, service worker. Here we focus on community requests such as custom domains, search engine optimization, and more. In the system utilities or dApps area, this is all about NNS front-end app, internet identity, exchange integration. We are working here on the NNS front-end app. You may have noticed that the design is slowly changing for the better. And the team has been quite busy preparing for the SNS launch. The II team works on supporting custom domains, and we have worked actively with the community on the first token standard that is hopefully about to be voted on soon. In the governance or NNS area, the focus is clearly on the SNS launch. And recently we determined that there is a strong link to the community fund, so we also work on that. I will not talk in too much detail about developer experience, which is about language, Motoko, and the SDK, because we have a dedicated section on this later on. Finally, infrastructure and ops. This is not just about operating the IC. It's just as much about the infrastructure needed for Dfinity to run our development environments. And so you see, for example, we work on internal topics such as Bazel for our CI system, but also on the new node hardware for replica nodes. This is a sneak peek at this updated roadmap format. Stay tuned for more details on the forum, and we are also working on an updated website to reflect this approach. Thank you very much. Back to you, Jan.
Thank you, Samuel. I mean, the foundation's goal, or one of the goals, of course, is to grow the internet computer, build the internet computer as you have just seen. And therefore, one major concern is also to know how the internet computer is doing. And Manu Drivers, our engineering manager, one of our engineering managers, made some pulse measurements of the internet computer, and I'm curious to see what he came up with.
Exactly. Next slide, please. Cool. Yeah, so hi, everybody. Very nice to see so many community members here today. I'm Manu, and I'm going to speak a little bit about some of the metrics about the internet computer. Let's start on the top left of this slide. This graph shows the amount of Canister smart contracts that are deployed on the IC over time, which I guess speaks to the usage of the internet computer, right? And we see this number quite progressively growing, especially in the last months. We recently hit the 100,000 canisters milestone, which is very nice, and we're already well on our way to the 150,000 milestone. Interesting jump in January that's I think partially explained by OpenChat launching their new version, adding a lot of canisters. But yeah, overall, I think this shows quite a nice growth. Then the top right shows the amount of community repositories on GitHub. We use the GitHub API to look for projects that contain things like a dfx.json and I think some other things as well to try and identify which projects are building internet computer projects. The big jump in April is actually how at that moment we changed how we measure this. So we were likely undercounting before, and we corrected that. But also since that point, we see I think quite a increase in growth, which is very nice, showing that more people are building. And I think an important point here as well is that this only shows the public repositories, of course. We cannot find the private ones. So we know that many people are building in private repositories. That is, I guess, not counted in this chart. Then on the bottom left, we see the number of subnets that the internet computer has. Here you see that actually in the first, let's say, half year of the internet computer, we grew all the way to 30 subnets, I guess from zero, which is quite rapid growth. The growth this year has been a bit slower in subnet count. We're now at 35. There's actually good explanations for this. Sam already mentioned there's some hardware change going on with the node providers, so they're getting a lot more storage, which is very useful for the internet computer, which means they need to be taken out of rotation and then added back to subnets and things like that. Also, there are actually quite some nodes that some hardware that is ready to join the internet computer, but it was challenging to join the internet computer, which is something that has been where I think we've made a lot of progress, and now node providers can independently join the internet computer. So with that, I think we expect the node count to rise and also the subnet count then to rise in the future. And so this would grow the capacity of the internet computer even further. Then the bottom right, the last one is that shows how many pull requests we merge per month in the main internet computer repository. And so here, like if you see a higher number, it means we make more changes every month. And therefore meaning that I guess the rate at which we are improving the internet computer is increasing. And you see overall, I think a trend going up. There were some small dips in April and July, likely explained by some vacation time. And I guess July is not technically over yet. But overall, I think you see a trend here that is going up, which is great. It shows we're getting faster and improving Internet Computer. And this is also likely explained by the fact that our R&D team has grown over 25% this calendar year already. So we have more people helping us out. Yeah, so I think overall healthy metrics across the board. Back to you, Jan.
Thank you, Manu. Happy to see that the Internet Computer does so well. Next up, we have two demos. I'm very excited about both of them. And in fact, these demos show features that are only possible on the Internet Computer. You could not build them on any other blockchain. The first one is about how a canister can make calls to the outside world. And here we have Ivan to show us more. Take it away, please.
Hi, everyone. Next slide. My name is Ivan Mallison, and I'm one of the engineers working on the consensus layer of the Internet Computer. So as amazing as the IC ecosystem is, the limitation that canisters can only speak with other web services that are built on the IC prevents the development of canisters for several important use cases. This includes getting exchange rates for cryptocurrencies to build DeFi applications, sending out push notifications and email, and just generally accessing the wealth of data that Web2 services have to offer. Next slide. The way that most blockchains approach this problem is with a solution called oracles, where a centralized off-chain authority reads from a specific external data source and writes data to a special smart contract for that data source. Next slide. Developers are then able to write their own smart contracts that interact with the data source by using the Oracle smart contract as a proxy. Next slide. This approach has a few downsides. Because it lives off-chain, the authority responsible for populating the smart contract is another entity that must be trusted. It's also another entity that could possibly fail, even without any maliciousness on the operator's part. Furthermore, off-chain setup is probably a little bit too costly for use cases that aren't widely needed, which means that in practice, there are really only a relatively small set of resources that are actually accessible in this way. Next slide, please. The approach to solving this problem that we are taking for the IC is essentially, at least from the perspective of the API that is exposed, to allow canisters to directly make HTTP requests to any data source. And here you can see like a little code snippet that shows how easy it really is. Next slide. Next slide. What is happening underneath the covers is actually a little bit more complicated. When a request is made, it's actually placed in the subnet's replicated state. From there, when a replica sees that the request is in the replicated state, it makes the HTTP request that the canister made to the external data source. So this applies to all replicas. So we get a little bit of a fan out here. Next slide, please. Once the replicas are able to reach consensus on what the response to the request should be, they include it in a special type of payload in the block. Next slide. Once the block is finalized, it will deliver it to the execution layer, which will take that HTTP request and resume execution of the canister that made the request. And with that, I will hand it over to QJ, who's going to demo an exchange rate sample dApp that was built using this feature.
Okay. Yeah, so this is QJ from networking team, and I'm happy here to share with you how we build a sample dApp for canisters making direct HTTP calls to the off-chain service directly from the Internet Computer blockchain. This exchange rate sample dApp pulls the ICP to USDC exchange rate from the Coinbase API directly without a middleman infrastructure. And of course, this service can be extended, the data source can be extended to many more if needed here. The source code of this sample dApp is already open sourced to Dfinity examples repository. And I will show a little bit code of at here while the HTTP call is actually being made. As you can see, the way that Canister making a HTTP call directly off-chain is very similar to how a HTTP call is being made traditionally. With that, I will do a quick show of this demo. There are two parts involved in here: the front-end UI canister that presents the rate chart, and a back-end canister that make the real HTTP call, queues the jobs and data processing. To respect the Coinbase API rate limit threshold, the calls made by this canister are in an asynchronous rate limited way. So upon my first UI request, the backend canister is spinning off to make the calls. And for the second request, I expect that rates are coming back this time. As you can see, we have some rates coming back, and the backend is continue working on pulling the remainder of the rates. And a few seconds later, I do expect the full rate will be showing in this UI. So this sample dApp is showing that the feature is fully functionally. As you can see, this is currently deployed to a Dfinity testnet. This feature is not currently enabled in mainnet, but will be very soon, starting with one application subnet. And with that concludes our demo for the Canister HTTP calls, and I hope you'll find it fun and convenient to build with this new capacity. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ivan and QJ. The next feature is a feature that we have been working on since more over than a year, and this one brings smart contracts to Bitcoin. Please, Islam, take it away.
Thank you, Jan, and hello, everyone. As Jan mentioned, my name is Islam. I'm an engineer at Dfinity, and I am very excited to be sharing with you some updates on the Bitcoin integration. For context, the Bitcoin integration is a feature that allows canisters to directly interact with the Bitcoin network without the use of any bridges. And so what that effectively means is that canisters can now receive, hold, and send Bitcoin, just like any other user on the Bitcoin network. And this opens up the door for a lot of really interesting use cases. So as Jan mentioned, we would now have Bitcoin smart contracts. So you can write a canister that can programmatically send Bitcoin or programmatically execute code whenever it receives Bitcoin. There is, of course, CKBTC, or chain key Bitcoin, which is a form of wrapped Bitcoin that we will be introducing for fast and cheap Bitcoin transactions on the internet computer. You can build a decentralized exchange. You can use Bitcoin to participate in token sales. You can stake Bitcoin in a DAO. Really lots of possibilities here. And this is made possible with two new APIs that we introduced. Next slide, please. And this is possible with two new APIs that we introduced. So there is the Bitcoin API, and this is a very low-level API that enables canisters to fetch the balance of any Bitcoin address, the UTXOs of any Bitcoin address, and to send transactions to the Bitcoin network. And as I mentioned before, this relies on direct communication with the Bitcoin nodes. So the replicas communicate directly to the Bitcoin nodes in order to fetch new blocks, as well as to send transactions to the network. And secondly, next please. We have the threshold ECDSA API. And this is an API that enables the canisters to securely hold and use ECDSA keys. And this is more challenging than it sounds because we cannot securely store the secret key onto a single node or in the canister's memory. So we developed a threshold ECDSA protocol that splits up the secret key across many nodes on the internet computer. So with that in mind, I'm going to show you a demo that showcases how these two pieces fit together. If I may share my screen, please. All right. Okay, so on the right, we have a Bitcoin testnet explorer, and on the left here, I have a canister that is deployed on the internet computer. I'm using the Candid UI here to interact with its endpoints. So for example, I can call this get pay to public key hash address. And what this is doing in the background is it is using the threshold ECDSA API to get an ECDSA public key. And then it is transforming this public key into, in this case, a testnet pay to public key hash address. You can generate any type of Bitcoin address type that would be supported as long as it's relying on an ECDSA key. And so this is the address of my canister. I can look it up in the testnet explorer. And of course, I can send Bitcoin to this address just like any other address. For the sake of time, I already topped this up with a little bit of Bitcoin from one of the testnet faucets. And I can also query from within the canister the balance of this address. So this is using the Bitcoin API to fetch the balance that I have for this canister. And I can use that API to fetch the address of any address on the network. So we see here that we have 10,000 Satoshis, which corresponds to this very small amount of Bitcoin that we have. And I can send this Bitcoin to any other destination from within my canister. So for example, let me copy this address, which is the testnet faucet that I got the Bitcoin from. Looks good. And I'm going to send some amount of Satoshis. And this is doing quite a few things in the background. So this is first fetching information about the fees from the Bitcoin API in order to come up with a fee estimate. Then it is fetching the UTXOs of the Bitcoin address of the canister. And it's using these two to build a transaction. And then it's signing this transaction using the threshold ECDSA API. And then finally, the transaction is sent to the Bitcoin network. So that's why it takes a few seconds for everything to be done. And so here it returns the transaction ID that it had sent to the Bitcoin network. So if I were to refresh, oops, not the canister, if I were to refresh the block explorer, you'll see here that the transaction is now in the mempool, and within a few minutes, it will be confirmed. As soon as this transaction is confirmed, the canister will be able to see this information updated via the Bitcoin API. This does take a few minutes, so we wouldn't have time, unfortunately, to see it within this demo. But you don't have to take my word for it, because the Bitcoin API and the threshold ECDSA API are available publicly. For now, we're only supporting the Bitcoin testnet, but it is functionally complete. And the source code for this very example, along with tutorials in both Rust and Motoko, will be released within a few days. So we would love to hear your feedback and would love to see what you're going to be building with this feature. And that's everything on my side. Back to you, Jan.
Thank you, Islam. I'm very much looking forward to celebrate the first Bitcoin transaction by a canister. Next up, we have update on the community. I mean, the Internet Computer, of course, exists only for its community, and Dfinity is dedicated to make that community flourish. So please, Eva, tell us how the community is doing.
Thank you, Jan. So as you said, the community is really essential for a blockchain network. And it's also essential actually for growth within especially a foundation of a blockchain network. So that means in all our growth approaches, community is one of the biggest topics. And that's why we would like to dive a bit deeper into what has happened over the last couple of months and give you a bit of an outlook. So if we move to the next slide, I quickly would like to share some numbers with you, just that you know a bit where we are at. You all know we are a decentralized protocol network, but that also means we actually interact digitally over many, many channels. Most of them are bundled under the word social media. So social media is a key topic for us, and a key indicator of how the community is doing, how it's growing, how it's interacting. That's why I show you some of the numbers here. We are transparent. That's why I also have a red number in this slide to see where we haven't grown as wished. But overall, you see Reddit, Twitter, Telegram, LinkedIn, CoinMarketCap watch list, and the YouTube subscribers. End of Q1, the numbers end now. And I guess what I would like to highlight is, I guess Reddit is kind of a good, healthy growth that we see. Obviously, we still want to increase that a bit. What is really amazing is the Twitter followers. That has a lot to do with Supernova and the campaigns we run over Twitter, because on Twitter you can target quite good who you want to reach out to. So we have a 37% increase of our Twitter followers. This is great. Telegram is a bit of another story, but actually I want to mention this is only the Dfinity Telegram. We're also going to look into what are the needs on Telegram. It's not only announcement, it's also interaction. So hopefully we will bring that number up, or at least have more channels to show. And then I guess the last metric that I would like to point out is the CoinMarketCap watch list. This means actually that potential people that are interested in a token go to CoinMarketCap and they want to monitor. If they want to monitor it, they put it on their watch list, and we have increased 15%, which is actually really great and shows a bit of how the interest in ICP, but especially internet computer, I guess that's where it's coming from, is increasing. And now going to the outlook, which is on the next slide, please. So what are we going to do for community growth? Top priorities in the next half of this year. What we're going to start with is have Twitter spaces, so that we go away from this one-way communication or having one-way communication and chats, to really enable everybody to talk to each other, also you guys in the community. So that is something, a pilot that we're gonna launch quite soon. Andrew is in the lead from my team. You know him probably also from the Supernova hackathon. Then we will also create some additional video content, so that we have a bit more emotions in the way we communicate, and also give you a bit of a better sense of who are the people behind Dfinity, but also in the community. Then the second aspect is targeted to growth. So as you know, we have the community fund program. We got to tweak that a bit and also make it more community oriented. So I will leave it as it is of now. Hopefully we can announce something along the way. The second part is local community growth initiatives. So we also do an assessment, where is our community located geographically, and then see, okay, where do we have kind of big communities versus not as big communities, and then create local initiatives to increase the growth there as well. And then the last very important part is engagement. You see already we are always open to engage with you guys. So I already mentioned it, social media is one of our core targets. So we aim to streamline our social media presence, and also have more formats where the community is actually involved and can participate, or even own certain channels. That's also in the pipeline. And then a very nice announcement. You saw that we have people talking to you, a lot of people from Dfinity talking to you, but now we have a community management team that is dedicated to watch those channels, to make sure that on all the channels we are present, and where not, that is clearly communicated. And therefore, I would quickly give the word to Herbert. Herbert was actually also doing lots of things in China and built up a community very successfully there. And he's now looking into ways how we can build further communities across the globe. Herbert, maybe you want to say hi. quickly.
Thank you, Eva. Hey, hello everyone. My name is Herbert. I'm currently the HAGM for Dfinity. I'm really excited to take on the additional responsibility of growing our global developer community. So in the last 12 months, really, influential IC communities are springing up in many regions. You know who you are, such as Psychedelic, ICP Maximalist, NNS DAO, IC Devs, ICP League, D+, and I can go on, Canister HTTP, and MetaTribe, just to name a few. So we're really looking forward to working with all of you to drive developer adoption of ICP in all corners of the world. And we're trying to build together with you in partnership, we're trying to build a community culture of being more responsive, more supportive, more transparent, and most importantly, more decentralized. So, we'll reach out to all of you in the coming days to brainstorm ideas how we can do that. And as Dom always said, this is still the early days of the 20-year remarkable journey of ICP. The best is yet to come. So, really excited for this journey. Thank you. Back to you, Eva.
Thank you, Herbert. Yeah, and I see some comments and some questions. Reach out to Herbert. You can also reach out to me. We already have some ideas. We really want to make you, the community, co-creators, co-growth initiators. And that's actually what a good growth team does in the foundation. They set a spark, but then the community takes it and drives it further. So really curious to hear what you're saying, and yeah, just reach out to us. And with that, I pass over to my team colleagues, actually Lomesh, who shows you a bit more what's happening with different projects in the community. Thank you.
Thank you, Eva. Next slide, please. Well, the IC developer community continues to make great strides in progress. So a couple of quick highlights from the last week or so from the community. So Discover, which is a leading social media platform on the IC, built completely 100% on-chain, announced $9 million in funding. Some of the key highlights from Discover is they already have more than 100,000 users, which basically makes them one of the largest Web3 social media platforms already. And kudos to them. Hopefully this funding helps them meet their goals even a lot faster. They have already facilitated millions of dollars in NFT airdrops and runs completely on chain. One of the key things I also want to highlight is they also seem to have the strongest potential to drive the Web2 users onto Web3, thanks to the reverse gas model of IC, where the users do not need to have any external wallet or basically pay any gas fees to interact with smart contracts. So Discover executed it beautifully, and congratulations to them for this round. Next slide, please. I think another one I want to give a big shout out to is Jordan and team and they have been building Azel, which is essentially a TypeScript CDK for IC. So they've been making a great progress. The last week they released version 0.5, which now is practically feature parity complete with Rust and Motoko CDKs. Now, the reason why this is super big is they have a potential to bring a lot of millions of web developers, which are more comfortable with JavaScript and TypeScript, to basically bring those, making it very, very frictionless for people to come and try to build on IC if they find learning new languages more challenging. So kudos to them. And they are working on creating these benchmarks, which will essentially help them explain the performance trade-offs between each different CDKs. So great progress there, and a lot of potential. Next slide, please. I think another one is Kubetopia. So they were the grand champion winner for the Dfinity Supernova Hackathon. One of the things that came to the news a lot in the last week or so is that as Minecraft decided to essentially block all NFTs from their platform. So what Kubetopia is building is a fully decentralized Minecraft-style sandbox, which is built sandbox game, which is built 100% on IC. I think this kind of proves that why a centralized system is always going to be a challenge for people to come and experiment, and why we would need to, why we cannot stop with anything short of a true decentralization. So kudos to Kubetopia. I think you have a you're in an interesting spot, and I think this all the best for your thing. Next, I'd like to invite Fulco from the team to essentially talk a little bit about the grants side of things. Over to you, Fulco.
Hey everybody, as Lamesh said, I'm Fulco and I run the developer grant program at Dfinity. As many of you know, the foundation gives out grants to developers who build tooling and startups on the IC, and I wanted to quickly show what we are looking for, some stats of the program, and then share 2 examples. So on one hand, we are looking for public tooling like agents, CDKs, and testing frameworks, but we also fund upcoming startups which have some sort of open source component to it or some public utility. Next slide, please. Some statistics about the program. We have had about 730 total applications, 273 awarded, and about 73 in the pipeline. And to give you an impression of some of the things we fund, let me give you 2 examples. Next slide. On the tooling side, we recently wrapped up a grant for IC Stable, which is a Rust library that allows developers with a Rust canister to store their variables directly into stable memory. And this is really useful for when you need to upgrade canisters that contain lots of states. We heard from some developers which had issues with that. So if you're one of those, please check it out with the links in the slides. Next slide. And another grant we recently awarded on the startup side was Exit Studio, which operates like a traditional art gallery, except the physical art is then mapped onto an NFT and auctioned off and fractionalized on their platform. And this will allow anyone in the world to invest in art that would normally be completely out of reach for them. And they will also open source some of their key canisters. Yeah, so that was the grant program in a nutshell. Next slide, please.
Thank you very much, Herbert, Eva, Fulco, and Lamesh. And also congrats to the teams behind Discover, Hazel, Qtopia. You can't imagine how happy it makes me to see all that stuff happening. And of course, we want to have much more of that happening. And therefore, next up comes our plans for making the life of developers even better. We have Michael and Jason presenting to us here. Thank you.
Hey everyone, I'm Mikhail Turilin, a product manager at Dfinity. I will share an update about the Internet Computer SDK roadmap. So the SDK is a gateway into the Internet Computer. So it's extremely important to make it right. Particularly, SDK should allow developer to build the apps they want, and the end-to-end experience should be smooth so it doesn't distract developers from the main task of creating the app. We were working with community for a while to find out what developers really want. Here is a recent Supernova survey, please next slide, that shows that developer experience is the #1 aspect of Internet Computer that users are looking to improve. Besides SDK, please stay tuned for our plans for other areas of the developer experience, such as Matogo programming language, documentation, developer portal, and others. Today, I will share an overview of our top priorities that we're discussing within the SDK team itself. Next slide, please. So we have 6 themes that are going to define our SDK investment. The themes are coming in no particular order, so you can consider them of equal importance. Because I have limited time today, I will cover only the general descriptions, and we can leave the details of the SDK roadmap to the deep dive that Jason will share in a minute. So the first is testing, monitoring, and debugging. And it's really hard to detect and fix canister errors on the Internet Computer. There are no specialized tools for that. So we will invest in both, in reactive and proactive tools to help developers to improve the code quality. For example, mainnet logging will help to detect errors and find the root cause for the canisters already running in production. Second is canister management. So we need to admit that creating and deploying canisters is just a start. You need to manage cycles, backups, cost, and improve performance. So we will enable community to create specialized tools by opening platform APIs in key areas. For example, system events will notify the canister when it runs out of cycles and gets frozen. The community then can build tools to notify the user or present information as a beautiful dashboard for consumption. So the next bucket is identity. And a large part of security and reliability boils down to managing your identity. Currently, it's hard to keep it secure, backup and copy between machines. So as a solution, we will create tools to manage identity on the SDK level. For example, we plan to integrate DFX with Internet Identity product to simplify key management across multiple machines. And just to be clear, it's a purely optional feature. You can keep your self-custodial identity if you want to. And we plan to extend this feature to include other identity providers in the future. The next is what we call local environment harmonization. And the idea here is that the best way to quickly run your application during development is to do it locally. It significantly reduces your development feedback cycle. However, if your application depends on other services that are not deployed locally, it can be a problem. So we are making local environment feature-rich to allow deployment complex apps that depends on core internet computer services like Internet Identity or other community projects. The next is mobile app and Oracle support. And the idea here that most of the end users prefer to access services on their mobile devices. However, for now, Internet Computer doesn't support libraries for both iOS and Android. So we'll invest internal resources and we'll engage with community to build first-class support for top mobile frameworks. Last but not least is what we call DFX quality of life. And DFX is a complex command line tool that sometimes is hard to use. So some tools are missing, sometimes errors are hard to understand. So we will invest in a strong set of features to make your everyday DFX experience more pleasant. And I will transition to Jason to talk about how we're going to engage in community in this process. Next slide.
Thank you, Mikhail. Well said. Hello, everyone. I'm Jason, engineering manager here at Dfinity. So speaking of roadmap, I welcome you to join us at our next monthly developer working session. There, we'll do a deep dive into our upcoming roadmap and go into all the themes that Mikhail presented on the last slide. After that, come back every month for checkpoints. We'll be using those sessions to let you know how we're progressing, keep you abreast of any changes, and answer any questions that you might have. We'll also be posting updates on Twitter under the Dfinity Dev handle. So follow us there. We'll be posting all of our updates. You can also check out some of the links we have on this slide to learn more about what the SDK team is up to. That includes our tutorial videos, releases, changelog, and more. So see you there. Thank you.
Thank you, Jason and Mikhail. So we're coming to one of the highlights of the global R&D, which is the community demo. Today, we are having Daniel and Matthew from ICP Pipeline with us. And it's sort of fitting, they're also set out to make the life of developers on the internet computer much easier. So please, Daniel and Matthew, tell us how you're going to do that.
Thank you very much, Jan. Next slide, please. Hello, everyone. I'm Dan Ryan with IC Pipeline, and we're very happy to be able to join today. At IC Pipeline, our main goal is enabling the workflows and practices associated with continuous integration and delivery, specifically for the Internet Computer Platform. Next slide, please. To us, that starts with a foundation of repeatable, consistent, disposable, and highly available but access-controlled environments that we can spin up on demand. We call these on-demand environments replicators. They spin up with just a few browser clicks. They're pre-tooled and ready to go, and they just work great for building, hosting, testing and QA, basically anything that entails sharing our IC projects in flight before deployment to the mainnet IC. Next slide, please. I mentioned consistency, and by that we're referring not only to code, but to data as well, which on this platform means canister state data. Data inconsistency has always been at the root of countless QA fails, So the ability to extract the data out of canisters and or inject complete data snapshots into canisters on a moment in time basis is another foundational aspect of this. So as a whole, we have a platform that will allow us to iterate, to quickly get from napkin sketch to POC, to fail fast, and when we need to break things fearlessly. And I think my friend and partner, Matthew, is about ready to share for some show and tell. Matthew?
Yeah, can I share, Emma? Thank you. Okay, so hi, my name is Matthew Beekman. I work with Dan. We're partners on IC Pipeline. We've got about, probably 40 years of collective experience building software teams, both at the Fortune 500 level, as well as startups of our own. I'm going ahead and logging in with internet identity. My laptop's in a docking station, which is why I'm passcoding. And this will bring you into a dashboard, where, as Dan just described, we have these concepts of a replicator. A replicator is an environment that, in essence, is an Ubuntu workstation with DFX tools built on it, and some neat networking and security. I'm going to go ahead and start. QA2 is labeled here. It does take about 3 + 4 minutes to start one. So that will be running in the background. I have QA1 already all queued up to show to you, and we're going to go into a deployment that I've already done. A deployment, in essence, takes a GitHub repository that has a DFX project in it, and you can choose whether or not you launch an internet identity canister, or even recently we've added the ledger canister, so that inside that local replica environment, you can interact with them without having to figure out how to actually get it launched into the local environment. So again, this was already deployed. So we'll go ahead and take a look at a deployment interface. As it's deploying, it kind of walks through all the different steps. It'll track the canisters that were deployed in the local replica. It'll also capture all of the logs that took place during that deployment. As you can see here, we have browser access to the local command line environment. It's running all of the DFX tools, as well as you can push and pull data locally if you have scripts and things to do such. Oops. So I've deployed a internet identity application, the test application. This is kind of a hybrid of what is supplied with the internet identity repo. And I've already created an anchor, again, before the demo here. But as you should notice up here in the URL, this is a publicly accessible URL that will be able to be shared, as Dan said, with authentication with your team. If this is your project, your product owners won't have to actually run it locally, or you won't have to share through a screen share on a video call. And it's really just the hello world, but with a fully functioning internet identity example. Then additionally, there's a border access, but without a canister ID, that's kind of useless. So the one-click access to be able to get candid interfaces. This is the ledger canister that was deployed locally. Come up here in a second. Again, publicly accessible behind a passcode. And as you can see here, it's the actual ICP WASM. So one of the things Dan also mentioned was the data backup. We are at a proof of concept stage, which we've been able to basically use for our own internet computer canister, which I have open here in another, just to not confuse that process. And it's timed out on me, which is fine. So here in our worlds, for our internet computer canister, we have software that basically takes the state data of this application and takes that through a process to serialize it. It then chunks it up into pieces and sends it off to a third canister. Third being that this has an asset canister that we're looking at now. There's a data canister that runs the IC pipeline manager application behind the scenes. And there's now a third canister, which is an archive canister. And taking a snapshot for this is as simple as clicking that button, chops it up into chunks, sends it to the other canister. This is now available for a restore, which would then suck those chunks back from that canister, reconstitute it, and unserialize it, and then it's available programmatically for you to replace variables and do work on it. This will become something that you can use on your project and then use IC Pipeline to manage pushing and pulling. Additionally, you can download, which will then, again, proof of concept, put you in a position to, and hopefully, well, not hopefully, but soon enough, we will be able to just open this up in text app. But it's really just a bunch of bytes that will then be able to then be pushed into your local replica, and again, programmatically deal with your state data. As that has been going, this other replicator should now be up and running. As you can see here, at first iteration, you will be challenged with a passcode, and that passcode can be shared through Slack or Discord with your team. You can see that passcode here. It gets regenerated every time you boot. And now you can just click here to copy it. And I think that was here. So if you have that, this is now the second replicator up and running and cooking, and we could go ahead and kick off the deployment, but that'll take long enough that the demo will be over before you can actually see it finish. But as you can see, it just starts watching, and you can sit here and stare at it or go get a cup of coffee. With that, I will end our demonstration. We have a Discord. You can find at icpipeline.com to click through, or Twitter, which we're just starting to put content in there. And we're about to launch our second Medium article, kind of better explain who we are and what we're trying to do here. Thank you very much for including us in this. We're excited to be a part of this journey, as I think someone said, on the 20-year program. And again, thanks again. Please reach out. We'll talk to you soon.
Thank you very much. As you can see, maybe you have seen from the comments, you've made a ton of fans already, and everybody's very excited about this. So thanks everybody for joining and for presenting. This is the end of the first public global R&D meeting. We'll continue this on a monthly basis. So the next session will be on August 31st. Hope to see everybody there, and have a great time until then. Thank you. Bye-bye.